I'd like to call to order the November 4th, 2019 Bayport City Council meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adam, would you please call the roll?
Mayor St. Orders.
Here.
Councilmember Dahl.
Present.
Councilmember Carlson.
Here.
Councilmember Hanson.
Here.
Councilmember Buckley.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. It's nice to have a full dais tonight. Welcome back. That takes us to the approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes or questions? Any notations that should be made? Okay, if not, then would someone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
The regular agenda?
Or, excuse me, the regular agenda.
Okay.
I was reading consent agenda while I was saying.
Very good. Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Takes us to our proclamations, commendations, petitions, and announcements. And first, we have the October Recycling Award recipient is Mary Bell at 578 6th Street North, and she'll be awarded for her recycling efforts with funding made possible with a grant from Washington County. So thank you very much, Mary, for your efforts. And then I'd like to take a moment to extend on the behalf of the council and staff our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Randy Kopesky. Randy was a former mayor, city council member, and a very strategic member of the Lower St. Croix Valley Beyond the Yellow Ribbon Alliance. And so as extending the condolences to his family and friends, as well as the citizens, the elected officials, and staff of Lakeland Shores. We're all shocked and truly saddened by this unfortunate passing. And he'll be remembered for his commitment to the public service and dedication to his community and just being a really nice gentleman and friend. So please accept our thoughts and prayers and deepest sympathy. With that, we'll move on to our open forum. Is there anyone that would like to come forward and address the council with items that are not on tonight's agenda? We set aside 15 minutes to do so. We do not have anyone that wants to address us this evening, so now we'll move on to our consent agenda. We'll consider a resolution adopting items 1 through 10 this evening. The October 7th, 2019 City Council regular meeting minutes, the October's payables and receipts, including checks numbers 011615 to 011750, the October building, plumbing, and mechanical permits report, an amendment to the Inspiration Phase 2 Villas of Inspiration Planned Unit Development Permit, the reappointment of Colleen Siegfried and Aaron Oakes to a 3-year term on the Planning Commission, reappointment of Sarah Wagner to a 3-year term on the Library Board, the lawful gambling application to conduct bingo activity at the Hesley Jensen American Legion Post 491 on November 23rd, 2018, an agreement with Jennifer Weiss and the Bayport Fire Department to conduct a training exercise at the property located at 15269 Upper 61st Street North in Stillwater, Minnesota, and a special event application from the Inspiration Homeowners Association for a holiday sleigh ride on December 7th, 2019. Finally, we have a letter of credit reduction, request number 1 from Nathan Landucci for the Villas of Inspiration. Does anyone have any questions or comments or changes to the consent agenda? Then would someone like to make a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Connie.
For John.
Adam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Hanson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlson.
Aye.
Councilmember Buckley.
Aye.
Councilmember Dahl.
Aye.
Mayor St. Orders.
Aye.
Ayes all.
We do not have a public hearing this evening, and we do not have any unfinished business, so we can launch right into our first item of new business, which is to consider a new off-sale liquor license application from LGN Enterprises, Inc. for the Bayport liquor located at 102 3rd Street. So Sarah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In recent weeks, the city received a new off-sale liquor license application for retail sales at Bayport Liquor, which has been for sale for the past several months. The Washington County Sheriff's Office completed a background check on the applicants, which is a requirement for all new liquor license applications. The Sheriff's Office indicated they found nothing in the background that would disqualify the applicants from obtaining or holding a liquor license. Based on the Sheriff's Office recommendation, the City Council is asked to take action on the new license. Assuming it is approved, staff will then forward the application on to the state for final approval and issuance. It should be noted that although city ordinance does not require a public hearing for new liquor licenses, the public is allowed to comment on the application. And the applicants are present this evening, and both of us would be available for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions from the council? If not, would you like to come up and introduce yourselves to the community? Love to hear from you. Yes, please. Come up and state your name and tell us.
My name is Alan Neer, and this is my family, Leanne Neer and Gracie Neer. And we are looking for a new adventure, so we decided to look at near city of Bayport and saw the liquor store was for sale. So here we are.
Wonderful.
Do you have any questions?
This is your first time owning a liquor store?
This is our first time owning a business. I've been in corporate America for about 30 years and feeling it's kind of time to try something different. So.
Well, welcome. This is great. It's nice to have the business continue, and we'll look forward to seeing you here in Bayport, around town.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, are there any other questions from the council? Or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve an off-sale liquor license application from LDN Enterprise Incorporated for the Bayport Liquor located at 102 3rd Street as presented.
Thank you, Connie. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, John. We don't need a roll call, do we?
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, welcome to Bayport.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us this evening. Okay, our second item under new business is to consider a cooperative construction agreement with MnDOT for the Highway 95 improvement project. So, Matt.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as the mayor had mentioned, this is a construction agreement with MnDOT for the 95 project work. Not only is it a construction agreement, it's also a maintenance agreement for stuff that we've already really been responsible for and stuff that we have added to the project. It primarily covers from the construction standpoint, the location of the work, the estimated costs. It requires a payment deadline of March 1st for our portion of the estimated cost. And then it also describes the responsibility for engineering work, permits that need to be submitted, any plan changes, and how to request change orders. And then the basis of the cost estimate is also included in the agreement, which essentially was created by SEH. So the other portion of the agreement obviously is the maintenance portion. Primarily, this revolves around sidewalk maintenance, tree maintenance, and lights. And so we've essentially been responsible for a majority of that stuff already. This just is allowing essentially MnDOT to put it on paper. And so all that will be required from here on forward. I did want to mention that in the future, if there's a project to take place and either ADA compliance is no longer in effect on the sidewalk, say ADA compliance changes from 5 feet wide requirement here to like, say 6 feet. Their next project, they would cover that and we wouldn't be responsible for that. They'd also be responsible if they were installing new curb and it required removal of any sidewalk portion. That would be their responsibility on a future project. So, if you have any questions, to go through all of it, would be super lengthy. I hope you were able to at least look at a little of it. We did ask for multiple changes in here and received a majority of them. So we did the best we could with what MnDOT was offering. So I'm open to questions.
As we get closer, you know, we've got new business owners in here tonight that will be affected by this. Are we gonna get some sort of kind of a rollout and be prepared for this, or letters going out to businesses and residents to be prepared?
Yep, so Councilmember Dahl, we actually met with MnDOT about a month ago now and discussed getting together with the businesses that would be affected and to have a meeting just with them to discuss, you know, where you can go and how traffic's gonna flow around their areas. And then MnDOT will also be putting on an open house probably in the March neighborhood for everybody involved, for the whole city essentially, to come in. So yes, there will be correspondence with the businesses. In fact, I've even talked to the new business owners about the situation. So.
Yep. Thank you.
And so, just for folks at home, the agreement or the payment agreement, is that being funded to SEH or is it being funded to MnDOT?
The payment agreement?
Well, the total cost, the estimated
Yep, so
receivables.
that total cost in there is the projected amount that is owed to MnDOT based on SEH estimates. And so that cost right there does not include any engineering costs, either for plans or on-site engineering. So there will be an added cost to that, but that's the amount that the city owes, that the city will owe to MnDOT on March 1st.
Okay, and so that amount is $820,721.36.
Yes.
And just to reassure that the public that we have that budgeted and there's funds available?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
So I'm confused then why there's two engineering line items. Is that just MnDOT's engineering?
That is the portion that, so there's a couple of pieces that MnDOT, not a couple, two portions essentially that MnDOT is requiring us. They're requiring us 8% engineering costs, both for their plan review and their plans, allowing us to incorporate our plans into their plans, and then the construction side engineering. So both of those are 8%. We actually got one of them reduced down to 7% because we'll be doing the water main on-site inspections and the sewer main inspections.
Do they have a total timeline for end-to-end project from 94 to 36? And do we know how much time it will take to impact to Bayport?
That's probably an open house question. I can give you a rough estimate. It'll probably last the whole summer. I think their projected construction timeline is May 1st through October 31st. Now, obviously, it won't be full construction that whole time projected, but that's their timeline.
So are they leaving a lane open the whole time for sure, or will it actually, do you know if it'll actually be closed at some point?
John could answer that question better.
Yeah, it's a good question. The traffic control plan does allow for some traffic to make it through pretty much the whole project as far as I understand it. But there is likely to be a posted detour route for, you know, to try and get as much traffic as they can out and around Bayport during the worst times of
like
construction.
way around, like stagecoach around?
Well, I don't know if I've seen that, but I think it's gonna be the stagecoach, yeah. It's not through the neighborhoods.
Okay,
No,
that's
and,
what people were asking me.
right, and so then the hope is that like the traffic, in particular truck traffic that doesn't have a need to be here in town will quickly learn that it's gonna be easier to go around and follow the posted detour.
That's helpful, thank you. Is there anything different with the maintenance and whatever for like the lighting, et cetera? Is it than in the past? I mean, we own the lighting on the highway technically? I know
Yeah,
we
so
don't
we own all
routes.
the street lighting on Minnesota 95 from, not all of it, so from Central to Fifth Avenue north, we own that lighting. And so we've been responsible up till this point for all maintenance on the street lighting. That hasn't changed, you know.
So which items didn't you get from MnDOT that you wanted?
Which items didn't we get? So we asked for a slightly greater reduction in that, the 7% engineering, because at first they didn't have sewer main inspections, and so we're like, well, can we get another 1%? Because they actually offered the first 1% down to 7, and they were like, no. So, what else didn't we?
Madam Mayor, we didn't want any maintenance obligation. I mean, we pushed back on them that this is, you know, we're concerned with, and that's when some of it was explained to the city, that we were already obligated, it just wasn't formalized, memorialized, I should say. But we'd pushed back on the maintenance of the entire right-of-way initially, so.
And so the key things to that maintenance includes, just could you review those things for the public?
Sure. So any sidewalk replacement, just like in the city, if we would have sidewalks that would need to be replacing, or like a couple or 2 years ago when we had sidewalks cut to make ADA compliant, we'd be responsible for that on there. The other portion would be trees. Any trees that die along that area, technically we're responsible to not necessarily replace, because I suppose we could leave that as open space if we really wanted to, but it's our responsibility to take care of them and replace the ones that MnDOT replaces with this project.
Can we add trees?
It's a good question. We would probably have to solicit MnDOT on that one. So whatever trees they're taking out with this project, they will be installing new ones in the same locations.
In the same type? Sometimes we get trees that are kind of shrub trees instead of nice big
Yeah,
tall.
so we talked about that already too, Mary. You mentioned that. The types that they proposed were all trees that are on the Bayport tree list that are good for this area. No more ash trees, obviously. We're taking out quite a few of those.
Or silver maples.
Or any type of maple. From the list I looked through, it was quality trees.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting that, maybe I misunderstood, but we as a city are paying everything for the flashing crossing light, right? Like, that's our responsibility?
That is our responsibility. That was our request.
Okay, because
Yep.
they didn't see a need for that? Is that their argument, or why would they not?
Correct. Yep, we're making that request. We paid for the current system, I believe.
Yeah, but it's interesting that, you know, it's a school right there and they're not, but, okay. It is what it is, we can't do anything about it. Okay.
Any other questions from the council or any other staff comments? Anything else that we should know?
One of the questions that was asked in previous discussions, Madam Mayor, sorry, the assessment apportionment for some of the infrastructure, one being the streetlights. There was council discussion as to where that responsibility should lay. That decision does not, this does not impact that decision. That'll be a later discussion when we talk about the assessments, the final assessments. So just for note that the city does own the streetlights, which is different than the majority of the city. So the question is, should those costs be assessed, or should the city bear that? So that decision will still need to be made by the council.
Okay. And property owners along the way have been starting to be communicated to regarding?
Yeah, the vast majority, I'll let Matt give in detail, but I think they've all been notified.
As far as what their
Project and that
cost would
they possibly will be impacted with assessments, et
be.
cetera?
Yep, so they've been notified a couple times of all of that. Yep.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, because it's not all businesses.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, it's both. And nonprofits, so it's a big mix. Okay, any other questions for Matt?
The one thing,
Okay.
I just don't think it's been said or explained tonight, the project goes basically from 94 to 36. So the portion of Bayport, obviously, we're not that entire stretch, that entire length, from the May through October duration. the majority of the summer, I believe, Bayport downtown will be impacted. We're within the city limits, but there's quite a bit of road resurfacing outside of the city limits that is included in that time frame. So it's not going to be downtown Bayport, no road for that entire time, but a significant portion of it will be.
Okay.
So.
Well, and they did a really good job with MnDOT of maintaining their website for the river crossing, so people could at any time see what was happening. Are they going to do that again for us?
That's a good question. We can follow up with that.
That would be nice. That would take the burden, plus they have the information, off of our staff of trying to maintain a website, or you. And since they would be the project leads, basically.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, we could maybe link to, from our website, if they're gonna do that, link to our website. Otherwise, we did it for the 2017 project, so
Okay.
we can provide updates too on our
All
website.
right. As long as people have access and not just in business hours, that'd be great.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Is anyone ready to make a motion, or is there any other further
No, I was gonna
discussion?
ask.
Oh, go ahead.
You're saying May till October. What are the chances of the construction period being during road restrictions? Which
So
will greatly impact the delivery, like for all the deliveries for businesses around.
as far as during, that's a good question.
I'm not following.
Well, John's wondering if people have to get in a different way, if they're doing road construction and they have to come in the back way, that we would have road restrictions on all the other roads. I'm trying to think when road restrictions come
Like
off.
weight limits on
Yeah.
them?
Yes.
Okay. just
They usually
wanted to
come
make sure I
off
understood what the restriction was.
Middle of May, something
So I'm
like
just,
that.
I hate to see if you have a transport trying to deliver to the holiday down here.
Right, and they have to come in
up
some
to a
back way.
residential street, which is placard 5 ton.
The good thing is that by that time, like if they do start work May 1st, that almost all the frost is gonna be out and hopefully it's dried up by then, so we would probably just allow that. If we do have issues, we'd probably allow them to come in some back way if it had to be that way.
So if there's, there's constant flooding, but if there's any damage to our roads then?
Well, that would be on us. Then, if we're concerned about it, then we probably wouldn't let them come in the back way. We'd have to figure something else out, so.
Okay.
Just something to note, so if it does happen, we got kind of a
Right.
plan.
Yeah, it's a
Thank you.
good idea to have it ready for the open house or before. Thank you. All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's all staff has.
All right. Any other discussion from the council, or would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution approving a cooperative construction agreement with the Minnesota Department of Transportation as presented.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Adam?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Dahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Buckley.
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlson.
Aye.
Mayor St. Orders.
Aye.
That is all.
And that takes us to our third item under new business, which is to discuss the potential updates to Appendix D, the fee schedule of the Bayport City Code of Ordinances for 2020. And Adam?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As part of the annual fee review, the staff has compiled some proposals here, and we will be bringing back the final draft to the December meeting. These are going to be the 2020 fees, the 2020 fee schedule, so they won't be applicable until January 1st. But council would like to, or the staff would like to get these proposed fees before the council now to take any other feedback or considerations or questions between now and December. So I'll quickly just go through some of these. I'm not going to go through each dollar item, but I'll go through the subject matter. What we've done for the majority of these is we've looked at what we're currently charging and then some of the other communities to make sure that we're both competitive and comparable to other cities in the area, and update them as needed. So going through these, you have the summary as well as the actual fee schedule with the red line changes. On this, I'll just go through the summary for the public and the council. The safety camp registration, that has been $50 per year, but we haven't had a separate line item for that fee. So we've separated that just to make it clear for the public and for staff. Under the building permit fees, we have a couple items here regarding temporary certificates of occupancy. And during some conversations since the packet came out with Councilmember Buckley, staff will be making some additional alterations to these regarding the difference between a temporary certificate of occupancy and escrows. So the dollar amounts won't necessarily change, but the classification of these fees will have to be changed. So I appreciate Councilmember Buckley's input on that. And one of the purposes of the changes for the temporary COs, occupancy certificates, is the amount of staff time that it has taken for staff to administer these. With the current builder that we have up in Inspiration, these are being utilized more than in the past and historically, which is requiring an additional amount of staff time, so an increased burden. So we're trying to account for some of that. Moving on to the cemetery section, we looked at quite a few different cemeteries to get comparisons, and Bayport cemetery fees were substantially low. So we increased those to be more in line with what the kind of going rate, or what I don't want to say competitive, because we are not for profit, but we're not recovering some of the time that we're actually spending on these. So that you can see those fees were changed, were increased. There was one fee where the headstone setting, we currently do not do that. We'll reset it, but the monument company sets the initial new headstone, so that fee is not needed for us. Moving on to the Parks and Recreation, our park fees were, compared to a lot of the surrounding cities, were substantially lower than kind of what the going rate is. And there is a divide in some of the comments I've received from the council as to where an appropriate level would be. Obviously, there's a cost for the city to maintain these parks, as well as before and after use. If there's a park shelter used, Public Works has to go pick up the trash and maintain those, as well as recovering for minor improvements. This wouldn't include any larger capital costs. That wouldn't be an appropriate place for that recovery. But in order to make sure that we're meeting the minimum of maintaining these parks and keeping them in order, as well as but yet still balancing, not having the cost too high where people won't want to rent them. We looked at these other cities, and this is where staff is proposing we should fit. That said, even with some of the increases, we are still lower than most of the other cities. I will note that there are some cities that don't charge at all for their public parks reservations. And I know that it hasn't always been the case here, our current situation, but I don't have the exact time frame that we've been charging for our park reservations, but it is common. It's the vast majority of all the cities do charge for reservations. Obviously, anybody can go there at any time without a reservation and utilize the parks. We also kind of restructured some of the fees. Instead of moving, we kind of broke it up by how many people were going to be part of the reservation, just because we were finding that some of the reservations were larger than the park could accommodate, and we received feedback on that. So over the last year, or at least the last 9-10 months, we the majority of it's during the summer, we've been kind of gauging that feedback, and the administrative staff has been really digging into this to come up with both the fees and the restructuring of how to apply the fees. Some of these fees, actually, it's a better deal to get like a full day as opposed to a 4-hour block, but we also wanted to leave the opportunity where we can have more than one reservation per day. Our current system only allows one reservation. It's for a set time, but it's being underutilized, under-reserved. And so we're making changes internally with our reservation system as well to accommodate that. One of the other changes we made throughout the fee schedule is our current system, depending on the type of fee, did not include tax. And so that would get confusing for some patrons, some customers, in that it would be, I don't have one.
Unusual dollar amount.
But it would be, $10 plus tax. Well, for simplicity, both internally and for the public, it's now $10, and that includes the tax. So that's, it's really, some of these were increased and some of them were actually decreased by $1 here or there to accommodate that tax amount. But we were kind of an outlier in that regard, in that our taxes were after the fact. And so this is, someone would show up with $20 and it was actually $20 plus tax. So this, we made that change. Again, the last thing with the special event permits were kind of reevaluated, and we are open to some feedback on that aspect. But we did reorganize that, restructure that a little bit. And then depending on the park, we changed, for instance, Perro Park and the Village Green. Those obviously can't accommodate the same size groups as some of our other parks, the Barker's Alps or Lakeside can. So the price structure is different for those due to the group size that the physical locations can accommodate. The last change under the Public Works section, we increased the amount for a driveway permit. And just to give the council and the public some information on that, that includes basically any modifications to, it wouldn't include like a seal coat for a driveway. It's only if it's removal of the driveway and then a new material is put down, or if there's any modification to the footprint of the driveway. The former fee was $25, and those driveway permits are reviewed by public works staff as well as our planning staff, and possibly engineering if it gets to that point. So there is potentially a significant amount of staff time in order to review those. Some of them are simpler, some are more complicated, but we were undercharging for that compared to some of the other cities that we looked at, and based on our amount of staff time. So that was.
Does that include new construction?
As far as the new home construction, no. I believe that's included in the building permit. I don't believe that's a separate charge. Sarah, do you know on that? I don't believe it is.
For infill development in downtown Bayport, because they're usually tear downs and rebuilds, there's some work that goes into that I think we've had to require a driveway permit for that before. But for all the new construction up in Inspiration, that's all, it comes in as a package with the submittal for that. So it's very rare that we have infill development.
Any other questions from the council?
Well, my own thought was, when you're doing those, which I think is great, because I know sometimes those pavilions sit empty then, but let's say someone reserves it from 8 to noon, and then someone wants it from like 12:30 to 4:30. What if the people that were there are we going to have staff go check out that it's left usable? Do you know what I mean? Because I know we've gone down there and the groups will leave, and most of the time they're pretty good, but.
It depends on the, obviously, most of these take place on the weekends.
Right.
And so we haven't, historically, we haven't had staff go in, we haven't had a need to.
Right.
But that's something that we would have to determine internally as far as having
Or do you
our
just-
policy would be to make sure that that's, you know, that it's not left in some type of disrepair, unable to be used.
Well, that's my only, I guess, concern about when you have it. I think it's great to rent it twice, or you can get 2 shifts out of it. It just would be, that would be my only thought, is if
Right.
the person that, like, let's say John came down with his wild family and left a mess in the garbages and
I was thinking the other way around.
Oh, no, we always clean up after ourselves. I'm kidding, John. And then I were to come in and it's like the tables were dirty and the food was, you know what I mean? How are you gonna defer from that, or just kind of tell people ahead of time? Bring a bucket
That part of the
soapy water.
process still has to be worked out.
Okay.
The situation that we've been running into now is someone will want it from 5 to 8, you know, in the evening for a dinner barbecue. And someone else they'll ask for the same shelter from, you know, 10 to 1 or, you know, midday. We weren't allowing the second reservation to be able to use it. We were only reserving it for once during that whole day.
Right.
So at least we'd like to be able to allow it because there's a demand for it.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, I just, that would be my only.
So that part still needs to be worked out with Public Works. Depending on I guess the interest, we may be able to justify, you know, having at least the garbage is emptied or something. It also depends on, I don't want to say a case-by-case basis, but some are going to be more intensely, you know, the impact will be more intense than others.
Yeah.
So we want to keep our parks the gem that they are.
So if you're going to rent it twice, is there a gap turnover time to ensure? Because you can't just say, you know, it's noon and I'm now at 12:15 and you have, I mean, that just creates a lot of hard feelings. So is there a gap that's factored in? And if we have to accommodate cleanup between parties, how do we recoup that staff cost? Because that's adding cost. I mean, I know that we're adding fees, but having someone do that on a weekend is going to be a considerable, you know, cost to the city. So I just want to make sure if we're not adding more costs instead of starting to recoup our costs.
That process has, because that's not a fee related, when you get into the maintenance and the cleaning of it, that gets back into the fee aspect. The process and the policy of the actual park reservation is that staff's still working that out. Again, part of this is we're going to see what the interest is and whether or not we can justify it. If we find out that even with offering the double reservations, we can't cover the cost to the city, then we may have to look back at not allowing the double reservations because it's too onerous or too much.
You guys do a damage deposit on shelters like you do on the beach?
Not on the shelters themselves. Depending on what the event is, if there's a special event permit, you know, associated with it, then there's a potential damage deposit. Depending on the size and the structures, meaning the beach house and the nature center, have damage deposits, but the shelters themselves do not. That's something. This is also something that I don't want to say is a work in progress, but as I said, we're still working out. We'd like to expand the availability of the parks. So if we do discover that we need to add an additional fee to accommodate the cleanup, that we would bring that back to the council. We don't have to wait until next, 2021. Right now, our parks are pretty much done being used for the year as far as outdoor use, and so during the winter is a good time to come up with this process. The staff has discussed the back-to-back. We don't want to create a situation where someone has it from 10 to noon and someone has it from noon to 2. We want to build in a buffer there. As with all of our current reservations, if the instructions for the reservation, they know to call the officer on duty if there's an issue with not being released to the reserved party, if someone's already there.
So our PD has had to deal with that in the past. We hope this doesn't exacerbate that or make it worse, but we'd like to expand the usage.
Is there language that's in or could be added to all the contracts for renting that just talks about if there's damage incurred, since we don't have a damage deposit, that those would be, you know, expected to be recouped by the renter, provided they were proven that they were as a result of that party? I think it's just, instead of going through the work of having damage deposits on all of them, which is then going to be, you know, refunding damage deposits if they're not used, if we could have language that allows us to circle back afterwards. I don't know what the best process is for that.
Staff will definitely look at that.
Would you?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't expect you to come up with an answer tonight, but it's just something to think about.
Yeah, Mayor, my thought on that is, it's definitely something that we'll look at in the enforcement sort of, I'll call it clawback provision is always difficult sometimes when you have that, because it's in the past and everything, but I think you get a lot of compliance with that anyway, just by having that sort of pre-noticed in the documents that they have to deal with. So I think most people will, I think it's worth it to look at, so.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
I think it's a good deal for non-residents, I mean, what they're getting, but I think the fee is too high for a resident, being we're already paying for this. What it used to be was $25 for a day for residents. And I understand staff time and everything involved with scheduling and everything, with the paperwork and posting of the shelters down there. I would say leave, you know, residents $25, non-residents, I would increase it to kind of counter-react or counter.
See, I understand that completely, but our overall city costs have increased, and I think that the way that I just view it that the people that are using it are getting an added bonus. There's very few places that they could rent to host occasions at these, even at the residence prices. And all of us as taxpayers have an opportunity to use the parks passively. We take walks through them, we sit and we enjoy, we have picnics. But if we're going to be renting, I think that, you know, and they're incurring costs for the city that everyone else is paying for as well, that maybe having a fee that's more in line with what it's actually costing the city is probably, you know, I think we've been under recouping our expenses for a long time.
If you take a city of comparison to our size and that, I know other cities that don't charge residents, proof of residency. I mean, for years, there was no charge at all. And I think it's a great benefit for the taxes we pay, and we take pride in our park system that we have with the great help of our staff, Public Works and that, and I just think that, I mean, $50 is a lot of money for somebody that really can't afford that. So if they're gonna go through the process, I think 25 is more than enough to cover costs for residents for a shelter. The beach house is a whole different beast in its own. I mean, I understand the cost there because it's an interior, it's a building, you have plumbing fixtures, you have a fireplace, everything there, and you have a damage deposit requirement. But I think the shelters alone, $25, I think, is more than enough for a resident. And that's,
I tend to agree with you, John. I think that is a nice benefit for the residents, and we are paying the taxes already.
Could we come to a compromise and maybe just come somewhere in between that?
$25.50? Okay.
No, I'm thinking like maybe 35 or 40, and then we do add that. I'd like to recoup it though with outside renters, and add that, bump up our outside, our non-resident amount.
So what numbers are we looking at specifically? $35 a day for up to 4 hours is the first one, right?
That's the half thing, and then it's
That's the
And then it
$50.
gets into $50 for a whole day.
Yeah, I don't think $50 is too much for a whole day.
For one of our picnic shelters? Seems kind of like a lot to me. I mean,
Well, I guess-
The shelter itself, but, I mean, if we're having staff, you know, clean up and take away garbage and, you know,
they're doing that already. I mean,
there's
you
more.
can just show up at a picnic shelter and take a lot of garbage without having a person right now. I mean,
True.
a lot of people are doing that, so.
I would say keep it
I-
at 25 for residents for a full day, $15 for a 4-hour block.
I think that's
And
too
then
low.
for non-residents, I would increase that to 130 to 150 for non-residents.
I like that number.
I mean, it's,
Sean and Connie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess the thing is, we rent it every year in August, and $50, we just kind of put the hat out, and everybody puts in $1 or $2, every family, and so for me, I guess I don't think it's that much. But yet I do get, if you're only gonna have a family of, like your immediate family come down, I suppose you're looking at it like that, but we usually have a family reunion, and so it's,
yeah, if you have a group of.
the one thing I guess I was looking at it, it's hard to say, okay, who's gonna go down and if, oh, this is terrible, but if somebody wants to be dishonest, they can come and say,
Right.
well, hey,
There's
I'm only gonna have 50 people there,
Right.
so
You took one
I'm
of
gonna pay
my-
$50, who's gonna be down there to count them and say that they don't have 75 people there? So, for me, I guess to charge the $50 for the first one, I don't have a problem with that. I guess, when you go up to the $100, well, I'm guessing most people are gonna say, I'm gonna have between 40 and 50 people. So, I don't know, I guess I don't have a problem with that, the one being $50. But I could go either way, and that's, I definitely don't think,
What percentage do we have of resident rentals versus
Yeah.
non-resident?
We're gonna hold you to it.
I believe the majority was non-resident.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
seems like it when you go down there. I mean,
Yeah, it does.
So
Well, I don't recognize
I
it.
think that'd be a fair compromise. Leave it at 25 for residents and up it to 135 or 150 for non-residents.
Any comments from staff on that, of why we would or would not do that? Please be open and,
Sure. Well, we'll double check on the split, the ratio of resident versus non-resident. Sarah said she wasn't sure that it was, I think it was a slight majority of non-resident. The current staff was surprised at how many non-resident reservations we have.
I'm sure. Yeah,
We
it's beautiful.
have very, Lakeside Park alone is, I described it as a jewel earlier. It's a rare, another rare opportunity on the river. There aren't a lot of cities that have the facilities that we offer, and now we have a brand new playground that'll be, in the spring, that'll be able to be used, or in the cold. But it has a lot of facilities, a lot of amenities, right out there on the river. I mean, it's beautiful. So there are no apple-to-apple comparisons, but it's a popular between the beach house and the shelters right there on the river. We have a lot of non-resident use at the park, and the residents get the first crack at it at the beginning of the year, but throughout the year. We have quite a bit of non-resident traffic in there.
So do we need to take action on this tonight, or
No,
do we
this
just,
is,
okay?
what
this
what
just
staff is
discussion?
looking for is feedback and any, not just the ones that we propose, but any other fees that you'd like staff to look at when we bring it back in December. What we can, based on what the feedback so far on the shelters is, look at the resident versus non-resident and increase the non-resident and decrease the resident. Is that what I'm hearing from the council?
John, we didn't really hear from you.
Yeah, when I went through this, I felt like all these seemed reasonable. I can certainly see the arguments either way. I do like, it's easy to say as a resident that we should take care of our residents, and we certainly should, but I think as it's presented, it seemed reasonable to me, but I could certainly be convinced to make it a little more affordable and easier for a resident to want to pick up that cost, you know, or not have to pick up as much of a cost as a non-resident. And then one just kind of technical question, since we hadn't gotten to me on Barker Zelps and the fields, the ball fields versus the soccer fields, there's $100 difference for the season. Is that just because we're dragging the softball fields or something? I'm not curious why there's such a, on page 7, upper right-hand corner. You know, your seasonal fee is $225 for the ball fields and just $125 for the soccer. So just more of a technical thing why there's such a significant difference on those two.
Is the ball season longer than the soccer season? No, yeah. I mean, usually it is. I know when my kids played, ball seemed like it lasted longer season, or soccer was a shorter season, but.
Whatever. It just seemed unusual to me that they were different. And
I guess that's why I
so
thought it was like
significantly
that.
different.
Councilmember Dahl, I might have some information on that. They're not truly soccer fields meant for a game, you know, that are manicured or striped or that sort of thing. I think that's the justification. It's more for pickup or practice and that sort of thing. And we rarely rent the soccer. I think maybe the AA does some programming there. Maybe you know because you have kids.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I think, and that kind of goes along with the Lakeside and Perro Park ball fields. They're just substandard. So
Okay.
I think that's the justification there for that.
Seems fair.
The Barker's fields, I know we do get assistance from St. Croix Prep and the Valley Athletic Association to maintain those, so we do appreciate that, but they do get used by other organizations as well.
Okay, well, I think you have some feedback from the council to think about and bring back for.
Can you take a look at other fees too?
Other
Particular dumpster fees for residents?
Are residents allowed to have, well, you could have a construction dumpster, right? Sorry to jump
Right.
in.
Yeah, right now
We're
it's,
talking about-
if you have a contractor come in and do an addition, they bring in a dumpster that's hopefully licensed by the city, otherwise it's $200. And along with that, the homeowner is responsible for $25 for that dumpster. I think it was originally brought up to eliminate the problems of dumpsters being in front of somebody's house or whatever for a long period of time, you know, 2, 3, 4 months. Being that the dumpster company is already paying a $200 a year fee, then why, I don't see what the residents getting out of a fee of $25 for a dumpster.
I do remember when that was put on because we did have some instances where dumpsters were becoming a fixture in the yard for
Yep.
an indefinite period of time.
Right, and I understand that, but it's
We have one in town.
It's
right now.
Do we
few
have them
and
in
far
town right now?
between. I mean, it's few and far between how long a dumpster. I think this one is 30 days. Once you go over 30 days, you have to get another $25 dumpster permit.
I was wondering, because it doesn't say that, how long the permit lasts.
On
So
the
I'm just-
application.
Oh, it doesn't say that.
Yeah, there's a whole application for the dumpster, the refuse collector.
So John, you're saying that we have dumpsters that are kind of lingering?
I know of one, the long-term one right now. And then my other question, because it's funny that you picked the dumpster one out, because I had a question about that too. Does that include, like, you know, really popular right now are those Bagster, the
Yeah.
ones you buy at Home Depot or Menards or wherever, and then it's cloth bag, fill it up, and so just something to think about, and we don't have to probably hash it all out now, but
It does say
something else
bulk,
to
bulk
consider.
container, so I.
Yeah,
think-
that's what I thought, maybe that's how you handled that.
Because I know a lot of contractors now, are instead of getting a dumpster, they're using a tandem axle dump trailer.
That's what I was getting.
And that's what they did when I had my roof replaced last October. So it's, I don't think it's fair for the resident to be responsible. I mean, the contractor's already paying $200 a year for a license to come into the city. And any problems they've had with parking on the street or an area that's prone for getting hit, they've always gone to the PD, and the PD will say, you can't have it on this street, you'll either have to put it up in the yard or off the alley. So there's monitoring there. And I know when I worked here, I would go out per the request of Karen at the time and just do visuals on existing dumpsters in the area. And the biggest issue I had with it was, if you're gonna charge a resident $25, you have a contractor over at a commercial building next door doing 3-4 dumpsters a week, they were never charged. So where's
So
the
how- but how do
practicality,
you-
where's the fairness?
How do we figure out how to keep individual residents from not having a dumpster as a fixture on their yard? How do we deter that?
Can it just be written up in our ordinances?
You can just do
You can't have
an
one for
ordinance
more than
where, I
zero.
think there's an ordinance in place now, Sarah can correct me, that you're not allowed, regardless of fees or anything, you're not allowed per city ordinance to have containers or dumpsters for a long duration. And I don't know if there's a definition of days.
I think we definitely want to define
Yeah,
duration.
but I don't think it's, I mean, you're paying a fee for a service, and what are you getting for it? Nothing. I mean, really. So I've, you know, $25, same as the rental fees and that. It's not a lot of money to some people, but that's a lot of money if you have a $3,000-4,000 project going on and you want a dumpster to come in, and now you're gonna get hit. And I don't know what the ramifications are if you don't get a dumpster permit. And you get called out on it, do you get double feed, or I don't know what if there is?
Adam?
Madam Mayor, our current ordinance does require a permit for all bulk materials for solid waste. The penalty for that is this violation. A penalty of the violation is a misdemeanor citation or administrative citation. Typically, the way that it's been in practice is we notify the resident and press them to, you need to get rid of that, or renew your permit. Depending on the circumstances, it's up to the city administration to, if they can't have a dumpster there all year and just keep getting new permits. I mean, it gives the city some discretion as to whether or not to renew that permit. It's not an automatic guarantee. The purpose of one of the purposes, as kind of already been discussed, was with the permit process is to identify the location. Some cities only require a permit if it's in the street, where it's treated more as an obstruction. You need an obstruction permit. If you have a large dumpster in the road, the city's going to obviously want to know about that. If it's in the driveway, a permit is required. That's more of a policy decision of the council. Do you want to regulate that or not? I wasn't here when this was changed. It looks like it was 2014 was the last time that it was discussed, or the code was amended. But what that permit does is allow us, fee or not, the permit allows us to, as has been described, track, at least know where the location is, make sure that it's through a licensed hauler. So some of it's, I mean, I don't want to say it's only $25, but for the $25, that's the service that's that administration is doing. There are more, that staff didn't necessarily look at that one this time around, but I did, after getting some questions about it, I did go and look, and the majority of cities that I found did have that, and it's not by any means higher than the other cities that I found. Most of it is we want to know how long a dumpster's there, why it's there, if there's something else going on. We don't want it to, as we said, be there for months on end without any resolution.
And I can understand.
We're working through some of those right now.
Yeah, as far as the duration that the dumpster's there, you're gonna know that through your building department when they're going out and when they do their final, there shouldn't be a dumpster there. So that would give a heads up. But I would agree with, if you're gonna park it on a city street, then I could see a $25 fee. Just for the police to make sure that it's properly marked so somebody doesn't hit it at night. But if a resident's gonna pay $500-600 for a 20-yard dumpster and it's in his yard, I think it's gouging, really, my personal opinion. I think it's an unnecessary fee,
Well, let's.
which we can discuss later.
Yeah, but thank you for bringing that up, and let's just think about that, and everyone will have a chance to ponder it, and we can maybe understand how we can corral some of our wayward folks without fees. It would be really a nice thing to solve, in more ways than one. So, okay, any others?
I just have a question that I just noticed, that we charge extra for the Sunday liquor license. Is that common to still do that? You know, like, it seems like it's almost deterring the liquor stores and things to be open on Sundays and selling liquor.
It's a separate license through the state.
Oh, you have
Sunday
to, they
sales.
have to separate it out still.
Correct. So it's an additional permit, like license. So,
I wonder if that will ever change now that it's,
I know it's like so common now, it's weird to be a separate thing, but,
we don't create the cash flow districts.
yeah,
it's a state.
yeah, okay.
So what you're trying to do is just get a feel of where we're at as a council as far as some of these fees, which I've talked to Adam in length over some of them, and I don't know how the rest of the council, but I feel we should have a workshop specifically on fees prior to the December 2nd meeting. And that's what kind of Adam, instead of airing it all out here in the public, we can really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, workshop.
I
know
fine.
it's
I feel like, I mean, some of us who've been on the council a long time have gone through a lot of these fees already, but if you have, suggestions,
Well, I've gone
questions.
through the fees, but I.
Yeah, I know, but
I
I think we've had discussions, but we haven't
Yeah.
with this council, so, yeah.
If that's
it'd
okay
be
with-
fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Speed up the process.
Okay, all right, any other discussion on that topic? Otherwise, we will revisit it in December.
Just a reminder for the council, if there are any other specific fees, after you go through it, perhaps again, the entire fee schedule, if there's anything you've identified that you'd like staff to look at, do some research on, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Okay.
Did the vacant building one go up
What?
last time?
In 2018,
Last.
we amended that, where subsequent years, there was an increase.
What was John's question?
About the vacant building.
Oh,
Thank you
yeah.
for that.
Can
Yeah,
you, thank our staff for all the work that they put in to do the research for this, please?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Very nice. Okay, so it looks like we're gonna have a workshop. That sounds good. Get that on the calendar. Any other final discussion on this? Otherwise, we'll move on to liaison reports. Okay. Michelle, would you like to start?
I did not have a meeting since we last met, but I did have a chance to go check out the Land and Water Legacy property. I don't know if anybody else did.
I've been on it in the past, but I hadn't been here
Yeah, so
recently.
I would recommend you go check it out. It's really a beautiful pieces of property that we now own. So, yeah. We just happened to run into the neighbors that are between the marina and the property. We're outside, so we had a chance to chat with them, and
Are
they
they
seemed
excited?
excited. Yeah, so it's beautiful, so just, that's all I wanted to mention.
Great, thank you. John?
No report, except we have a tentative date of November 18th. I got an email from Sarah on Planning Commission meeting, which I think is the short term rental. Okay.
Okay,
Well, that's it.
good, thank you.
All
Tanya?
right. Well, I did have a meeting. The library board met on the 17th.
And Jill and Sarah both went to the Minnesota Library Conference, and they shared their experience there. They both really enjoyed it, and they felt it was well worth it. In the last month, we've had 2 architectural firms come out to visit the library and check out the space, the down below space that they're thinking about doing some constructing on. And the firms asked questions about what the library and Jill was looking for. And I guess Derby Days went very well. They had 30 kids hunting for the medallion. And then Jill said the things down at the park weren't quite as well attended, but they went well. And Pam Clements will be officially retiring at the end of the year, so there'll be an opening there. The library is going to be upgrading their phone systems, and hopefully within the next 6 months. I'm not sure exactly what, but Jill said they need it. And then they're still accepting applications for a library board member. And, well, there'll be 2 that will be leaving us. They have received a few, but they're still accepting them. And our next meeting is in November at 6 o'clock on the 21st.
Excellent, thank you, Connie. And also thanks to Jill. She doesn't appear in front of our group a lot, but she does excellent work. So
very energetic.
Always, yeah, wonderful personality and great programs, and really a great addition to our city.
Yeah, just hats off to them for, took my 2 daughters down for the haunted basement. And,
thank you. I forgot to mention that.
My 12-year-old said, Dad, you're coming down there with me, right? So it's scary enough, even for a 12-year-old, so it was pretty neat.
Yeah.
So they appreciate that every year, and I do too. So.
And Jill was real excited because she had like double the teen volunteers that she's had in the past, so she was excited to have a lot. So I forgot. Thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you.
It's always a favorite.
John.
Extremely light agenda for October, so we did not meet Middle St. Croix Watershed Management Organization. I believe we have a banquet of some sort, possibly at the Stillwater Country Club, I think, in November. So I'll have, it's November. I will have more next month.
Okay. Great. I was contacted regarding the upcoming lighting of the green, so just make sure that you keep that on your calendar, that the Vagabonds and Coco and Bonfire and wonderful singers, and we typically get a nice visit from Santa, and the police are always there, and Public Works does a nice job setting it up, working with the community, and BCAL sponsors it, so it's very nice and fun. I am struggling with the night.
It's usually the first Wednesday in December.
December 4th. Okay. 6:15 on December 4th. Thank you, Chief. All right. So, and then other than that, I'm on the Chamber Board of Directors, and so we had our annual strategic planning meeting, and just hats off to the Chamber staff and the ambassadors. So active, membership is fabulous, and really giving a lot back, working with our nonprofits as well as our local businesses. So Rob and Anthony and staff and the A-team ambassadors, I just want to say thank you to everyone there, because they make a true difference in our valley. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Adam, for staff reports.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fire Chief Eisinger.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. For October, our call volume was 97 compared to 89 in October of 2018. The 2019 year-to-date is 1,048 compared to 1,063 2018. Monthly drills consisted of building construction, quarterly emergency responder modules. Fire inspections are ongoing, as well as plan reviews. October is a busy month for us with Fire Prevention Week. We visited schools and preschools. We had our open house, which was very well attended. We appreciated that, even though there was a snowstorm that day. We met to go over our training house burn that you guys approved on the consent agenda. We appreciate that. Myself, Assistant Chief Gallowitz, Assistant Chief Severson, and Captain Eisinger attended the Fire Chiefs Conference in Duluth. Really good sessions up there, so good learning experience. We had the Washington County Fire Chiefs meeting coming up here in November. We'll be escorting Santa on November 28th, the day after Thanksgiving. And reminder on safety tip is that keep alert with the shorter daylight hours as we enter daylight savings time. Use caution when approaching the intersections and keep an eye out for people walking as well as animals crossing during the dark. On my way down here, right here, there was somebody crossing here, so not everybody wears reflective materials, so we encourage that. So with that, I stand for questions.
Just a quick note, it'd actually be the 29th that Santa will be in town, because Thanksgiving is the 28th, right?
Oh, I have a typo there. Sorry, I must have looked at the wrong month. Thank you. Yes, the day after Thanksgiving.
I have one technical question and then one fun one. So, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't been on council for a year, but didn't we change something within the past year of how your calls were reported? And because there was a discrepancy from year to year, so, or am I way out left field somehow? I just remember those numbers, I thought being a lot different for a while, like you didn't count certain calls or something?
I think we
you didn't count them
prioritize.
against the firemen.
Yes, we don't. It's
Certain.
to be a member in good standing, you have to make 25% of all calls. We eliminated 8 or 11 addresses, so they don't count against the members. So those numbers are not reflected in mine. We do the overall, not the adjusted amount.
I must have missed something. And then something, I know having a family with young children, they get excited to see Santa on that Friday after Thanksgiving. Is there a schedule or a path that Santa follows? Because I remember last year I got inundated with, where's Santa, what streets are you going to be on, and how that works
There's
out.
an official, unofficial route that he takes. We do post it on the city website, and I'll get it over to Sarah.
Okay.
The problem is we start going down some streets and nobody's there, so we hook around. And then,
Get out there and wave Santa down.
yes,
It usually works.
we try to do that.
And I forgot that I had attended the open house, and it was a great event, so thank you for doing that. And I have to say that the fire hall still looks like it is brand new. The equipment and the hall are just maintained beautifully, so I was very proud to go back through and see everything. So
Thank you, the members appreciate that.
yeah, it's great, and a very good turnout, and it was cold and snowy. So, all right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Police Chief Eastman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Our past events on October 10th, I had a hazardous waste audit. Our evidence room has to be audited by Washington County annually, and then we get a permit if we pass. So there were no problems there. That was good. On the 14th, we attended the Diggy Dash Barker's Alps with Anderson Elementary. Officer Cornell and myself escorted them up 2nd and into Barker's, just making sure that the groups got through some of the major streets like 6th, and it can get a little busy and they're spread out. So the 17th, we had our training qualification, all officers, and then of course the 31st, we had officers and reserves staged throughout the city with glow necklaces and candy. We had a couple officers down here. People were still showing up at the back garage here. Next year, we're kind of in the works of looking at what we can do and get some approval from Mr. Bell and you all if we explore some other options, maybe a haunted house or maybe working with the library, bring something back. We wanted to give Sergeant Jackson a break with Kilo passing to enjoy Halloween with his kids for the first time in 18 years or something like that. They're not that old, but he's been here for that many times. So it was nice for him to be able to do that. Upcoming events, December 4th, Lighting of the Green, 6:15. Myself and my officers will be down there before Santa shows up because he steals our thunder as soon as she shows up. So we'll have a squad there with candy, and they can tour the squad, and they usually enjoy that. And then we have a mandatory post-audit night cold weather shoot that we'll be doing. And then Toys for Tots, we do not have a date yet for that, but we'll have locations at the library, the Legion, the bank, and here. And if we have any others, I'll post them. Our total incidents, calls, self-initiated responses as of 10/5 were 5,541. I also wanted to remind people, if you're going on vacation, snowbirds or what have you, remember you can fill out a vacation request. And I got a compliment from one of your council members this evening right before that he saw my reserve sergeant walk all the way around his house, pull on the doors, go over to the garage and pull and look in the house. So he was really appreciative of that, and I appreciate the kind words. I'll pass along to that. But
modern
vacation
technology,
trips.
it's amazing. But again, thank you to your staff and that for the period, a month that we were gone, that they were very thorough.
Thank you, Mr. Buckman.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate it. The miscellaneous Facebook posts that we put, and that it's usually some kind of safety announcement or whatever. Just a reminder, Minnesota law requires vehicles to pull over for emergency vehicles using lights and sirens. This means you should pull over to the right side and stop, wait till they pass, and you need to be within 500 feet from them, just so that they can get to where they're going, fire, ambulance, police. And I stand for questions.
Any questions?
Has the no hands-free, have you noticed a decrease or?
A little bit, TZ, they added that to the state gives us, the agency's money to focus on seatbelts or hands-free. And so they actually implemented another one, so they dished out a little bit more money to focus on that. So when that's done, which it'll go through Christmas, we'll be able to see, and I could report that. I mean, we're not seeing a huge uptick in it because we were already kind of on it, because we could stop them for distracted. You were holding it up and they were, it's just now they're kind of hiding it. It makes it a little bit harder, but they're still out there. We're still tagging people for it. So unfortunately, but hopefully, with the state assisting us with funding for that. So over time on their time cards, it says TZD in comments, and it's already paid for by the state. It doesn't come out of the taxpayers' dollars.
I'm kind of enjoying that quiet time in the car again.
Right?
I don't have to take work calls when I'm driving. So I just haven't hooked up that hands-free yet. So it just eliminates that extra distraction. So
True.
Anything else for the chief?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public Works Director Klein.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Public Works has been busy trying to get stuff done before winter, which obviously is arriving sooner again, same as last year. So we've been street sweeping. Of course, last year it hindered street sweeping. This year, we have a fair amount of the sweeping done. So we're kind of ahead of the game on that one. But with the cold coming, it makes it hard to sweep. Also been mulching leaves in the parks, winterizing the parks, some street patching, and of course plow preparation. The Public Works did a little to help host a cross-country meet at Parker's Alps in October. St. Croix Prep ran their one of their cross-country meets there. So that was interesting and kind of cool. They moved the bleachers out, so they had like a finish line, and they ran up through the woods there. So it appears they had a good turnout and that they'll do it again next year. So some of the larger projects that we're trying to finish up or work on, the 2nd Avenue North Drainage Project, if you happen to drive past there Saturday, they were sodding it, and that's about probably 90 to 95% done. They just have to put the soils in the bottom and then plant the bottoms of the drainage basins. Wellhead protection plan, probably in December. That'll might come before you just so that you have a look at it, and then it'll go out to other local government units for their comment. And then there's a process for accepting that through the state. Emerald ash borer. Currently there's a survey to survey all the ash trees on the city boulevards in December. That will occur. Probably Sarah will talk about a couple of grants that we have an opportunity to acquire later, but one of the grants might be used to cover like our GIS to be able to map those trees and how they're affected and location and stuff like that. And so that'll help play a role in what we determine as a management plan. Essentially, if there's 5 trees in a row that are ash trees, do we cut 2 of them down, plant 2 new trees, and then treat a couple of the other ones to try and make them last longer. So that'll be interesting, and hopefully we can acquire a couple of those grants to make that happen. Then finally, the MS4 permit, which is our stormwater permit. There's 3 more sections of it that'll be like the final written portion of that's due July of 2020, and then comes essentially the paperwork portion, which we've already started some of it, but yearly inspections, education, different things like that. So that's about it. Staying for questions.
Questions for Matt?
If they treat the ash, what's the success rate as far as?
So depending on how far gone it is, so they inject it actually, tree. They inject the tree, and if you inject it every 2 or 3 years, you can keep the tree living indefinitely. So, or for normal lifespan of an ash tree.
Because I noticed the big ash tree to the south of me on SRI's property, that they had a company out there, and he's got a metal medallion stapled to the tree.
Okay.
That signifies that it's under treatment, and I watched him, he probably spent 4 hours there doing an injection. And
oh, really? That long?
Wow.
Yeah, so it depends, part of it depends on the size of the tree for the cost of the injection, stuff like that. But yeah, they can, depending, they obviously determined that it wasn't too far gone if it had been infested. Maybe it wasn't even infested, but they know that it's in town and they want to save it.
20-inch or more in diameter. It's
and I'm trying to think, I think it's, what did we get a quote? Somewhere between $5 and $7 per inch to treat it. So if you had 20 inches times 5, that's.
I was just wondering if it's worth treating, and I'm sure the company would know if it's savable or if not.
Yeah, that'll be the kind of like what we do go around with the Department of Ag. Hopefully they'll be able to say, yeah, that one's too far gone, just by the visual on how many, they actually look for the woodpecker holes and how many there are in the tree. So, yeah, but so that'll play a role too on, how much money do we want to spend trying to save some of these trees? Because you have to do it every 2 or 3 years, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I was just going to comment, when staff comes up, when it develops the management plan, after we have the inventory knowledge, that will be one of the options that we'll be presenting, as either remove the tree, do nothing, or treat the trees. Depending on what information we get, those will be the kind of the options, a mix of that. Obviously, there's hundreds of trees in the city that were potentially be involved, so it's going to be. We'll have all that information.
Is the grant money for removal only, or is it for treating also?
No, there's actually 2 grants, and Sarah will talk a little bit more about that. But one is just for tree planting, I believe, and then the other includes all the comprehensive removal, devising a management plan, the inventory, tree planting,
stump grinding.
So one is much more comprehensive, and one bucket of money is limited to the tree planting for the replacement. So.
And when we have that kind of report or update?
When?
Yeah, when we, how long does, we can wait for Sarah to ask her how long it will take the grants to come back, or when we'll know or have a plan or strategy in place.
Madam Mayor, the grant is due November 15th, so next week, and we'll be notified by December 6th if we're selected to receive funding up to $80,000.
Okay, and then you're going to start this study over the winter because
they'll do it the beginning of December. We'll drive around with them to identify all the ash trees. Essentially, we'll hopefully even if, I assume even if we don't get the funding, I'd still recommend, because this is such a big issue, that we map all those ash trees. It shouldn't be that costly to be able to do that. And then essentially after that, you know, depending on what our infestation level is and or how far gone some of the ash trees are, then staff will start out with trying to come up with the management plan initially, and then bring our ideas to you guys.
You're gonna offer, if you have a company come in to do mitigation of it, do private homeowners, private property owners have an opportunity to get on board?
Yeah, I think that would be way cost effective. Yeah, because so in the city, there's just in the boulevards, not counting the parks, there's, I think the last time it was inventoried was like 2010. There was 262 ash trees. You know, just to cut down all of those, it's probably about, you know, for cut them down all and then stump grinding, rough estimate, $500 to $700 each. I mean, so that's a significant amount of money, but you're probably double, triple, quadruple that amount on private property. And so all those people, we do have a disease tree ordinance that says, you know, you need to cut these trees down. But once it starts happening, once you find the emerald ash borer in town, by then you probably have about 3 to 4 years before, you know, you start seeing significant tree death and stuff like that. So there's potential there, yes, for that. I suppose there would even be the potential that, you know, if the contractor we hire to cut down certain trees and stuff that is in town too, you know, maybe we could piggyback off that too and offer a fairly significant thing, and that might reduce our price per tree if people are interested. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Assistant Administrator Taylor.
Madam Mayor and Council, as previously mentioned by Councilmember Buckley, a Planning Commission meeting has been scheduled for November 18th and will include a public hearing on a draft ordinance language concerning the regulation of short-term rental as previously directed by the Council. The Planning Commission's recommendation on this topic will then be presented to the City Council at the December 2nd meeting. The closing on the land and water legacy parcels took place on October 17th. Matt and I are working together on a request for proposals for the demolition of these structures and coordinating with county and conservation district staff to develop a scope for the conservation management plan, which was required by both the DNR and the county for the grant funding. Staff is hopeful that demolition work can still be completed by year end. Staff has been working diligently to complete final edits to the city's 2040 comprehensive plan update in response to preliminary review comments received by the Met Council earlier this year. Staff anticipates completing the edits within the next week or so for resubmittal to the Met Council by the end of the month for sure. Other projects I've been working on are the liquor and tobacco license renewals and those fees for 2020. Doing lots of work with the fee schedule and updating forms for the upcoming year. Plan review on Landucci's first few building permits for the Villas of Inspiration. And then, as we discussed, the Emerald Ash Borer grants. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
It sounds like a very busy month. What about access, the new access to the land and water legacy? How is that progressing?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the current access, there's basically two private easements currently in existence to access these properties. Part of this whole project has been working with Anderson to basically they're going to be granting us a different easement to these properties, and then as part of that negotiation, we would extinguish the existing easement to which is the northern driveway to these parcels. So that can't go away until we have the new access because we need to access the property both for demolition and other purposes. So we're working through those with their property, the real property team and their attorneys. And so our attorney and staff has been going over that proposed easement language. But we're in the process of it. It really hasn't been time sensitive as far as it had to be done before the closing or anything. So we're in the middle of working on it. It's been going fine, it just hasn't been a top priority.
Okay.
That access, we're gonna be looking at, through part of the, we're gonna get a survey of the property at some point, and so there's work to be done to identify where. Right now, it's kind of the whole western side is identified as potential access. We want to narrow that down a little bit and identify where would be most cost effective, where would be ideal to have it. So that's, as we move forward, there's going to be some of the timing of it, but we're still kind of working through it. One of the things, just for the public's information, the city does own the property. We do ask that the public does not go to the property at this point. It's not open to the public yet. Within a year of October 17th, so by October 17th of 2020, public access is required, and so we'll be providing that by that date. The details of how that will actually practically be done that's what staff is working on right now. But obviously between then and now, staff will be having an open house at some point, a citywide meeting to not to generate interest, but now we're at the promotion phase. We can't invite people to come and take a look at the new property. As Councilmember Hanson said, she did go tour it. The council, being essentially city employees and covered by the city's insurance, you're welcome to go look at the property. But we do ask that the public refrain from going on the trespassing on the property at this time. We are looking to open it up as soon as we can, but there's some steps between now and then. So.
Okay, and all properties are vacated at this point?
Yes, all the properties are vacated. We just did another inspection today to make sure that all the personal property has been removed. So there was one dock that we're still working on getting removed. But otherwise, the properties have been vacated for some time now. Okay. And I don't know what the weather was like when Michelle Hanson, Councilor Hanson toured it, but we are excited to get the public there. There's some impressive sized trees, and it's going to be a great thing when we get done with it.
Very good.
Is it something while we're kind of in that 1 year limbo that maybe, Chief, you need to step up like a patrol in there now that there won't be residents in there, so people aren't going in there and dumping stuff? There is access via the the north side from the Anderson parking lot, just so we don't end up with a.
We had we did secure the properties. There's a gate that we had closed and had locked. Mm-hmm. We did open it because the gas company needs to come and pick up a propane tank that had to be picked up from the previous owner. I don't know if that's taken place yet, but that north entrance will be secured. There's a fence along the entire north and the west side of the property. And as far as the access through the south, the driveway there, there are some residential properties there, so it's a little less inviting. It doesn't look public because it's not, it's a private driveway. So that'll, but all the buildings, structures on the property are secured when place locks on all the buildings. So, and I'll work with Chief Eastman and staff to maintain the security and just check on it, make sure we don't have any issues.
Okay.
Hendersons are aware that they know that what stage of the game we're at right now with the property, so I'm sure their cameras and their security system or their security personnel would let the PD know if there's any unusual activity, and same on the south end by McPherson's. I don't think you'd have any problem.
We work very closely with Anderson Security on multiple issues, so this will be treated no differently.
We should probably do a couple when the ice is formed there, and people could come from the ice, so we can certainly walk around the neighborhood. They used to be on that list because they go south all the time, so they're familiar with us.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Thanks for the update. And anything else, Sarah? Okay, thanks.
Okay. feel like I did a little bit of talking, but I do have several items I wanted to update the council and the public on. One thing that we've kind of gone over a little bit tonight is talking about the December meeting and a couple items. It will be a kind of a heavy agenda, that meeting. Now we're going to have the fee schedule workshop discussion, but also Anderson Elementary has contacted the city and they wanted to come and discuss the possibility of, they're at capacity. They need to find more space. If you recall back when the school district was closing some of the schools, Bayport, one of the reasons that it was kept open is because it has such strong community support. It's in a city, well established. So they treasure Bayport staying here. They're not talking about moving it, but they are at capacity, so they're looking for options as far as how to accommodate the future students that they're developing. So what they have proposed is possibly looking at 2nd Street here and Second Avenue, and possibly closing that off, a portion of it, and expanding out this way. So it'd be expanding out the kind of southeast direction. So that's something that they've given us just a rough, actually got it today, a rough diagram of what they're kind of thinking of. We obviously haven't promised them anything, but we said we'd bring this to the council and look to have this conversation. It would be part of a bigger conversation that we would need to have. So yes, Councilmember Haynes.
So I'm on the community design committee that's looking at all of the facilities in the school district right now. And that's interesting that they've already brought something that they're thinking about, because it's the job of this team to kind of put priorities, a master plan basically of what we think needs to be done across the district. And I don't know, that's interesting because I think I'm the one who suggested, well, they should look into that. That's really the only way they can expand. But I don't think they're at the stage yet where they can make those decisions until we've given them the priorities. So it's interesting that they're already kind of moving on something. And I think there's also talk about like Brookview, and they're already trying to expand down there without, they're hopefully waiting for the final decisions, but.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. My opinion is there's other schools that need funding and help before Anderson would probably need it, but, so we'll see what happens, but.
Staff, the assistant superintendent and the superintendent is who we met with last week. Dr. McDowell had reached out to me a couple weeks ago, set up a meeting, and they talked about how the facilities design team was working on this. Their mission was to identify options that they can then kind of cut the design team loose, and they were trying to meet with some of the officials to just kind of narrow in the parameters of. No,
that's good. Okay, so it's otherwise, because they have to bring ideas, otherwise what do we react to? Because not everybody would know that's an option unless.
Right, so they were just trying to get more brainstorming to present to the team. So they discuss that.
Gotcha.
Was there any other questions? I guess, is that something that the council's open to having that discussion in? I don't think it needs to be a long discussion in February. I know the timing is when they were looking, because I believe the design team that's kind of works in their schedule of mid-December or so, beginning of December, that they were looking to identify some options to further investigate. So this is, I can share with the council the very rough concept that they had proposed, that they emailed today. I'm sorry I don't have that on me right now, but and then the council can get back to me if that's something that they're open to discussing. But tentatively, that will be also included at the December meeting. A couple of things I just want to,
in that, just thinking about the impact to the citizens that are living around there and traffic, and where do the buses potentially go, and then if there's more space, there's more staff, so then that means more cars. We already have kind of a car parking challenge around, so for safety and for the citizens who own homes around there, we just need to make sure that we're we're looking at it from all angles. And then how would the city be compensated for giving up any kind of space or access? So not saying that it's not a good thing to explore, it's just we need to look at it from every angle before we could, commit to something like that.
I guess what I would be looking for now is, which doesn't sound like, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Mayor, you're not completely opposed to it as of right now. I guess that's, if there is a consensus of the council that absolutely not, we don't even want to talk about it, I'd rather know now before I can notify the school district. I guess I don't expect you to vote on it right now, but if you're willing to at least listen to what is.
Yeah.
I think it's good that
potentially being discussed.
to get an open dialogue going with them and just see what their options are, which, who knows, it could be a good benefit for the city, even though it's more of a benefit to the district. But no, I'm wide open, absolutely get some dialogue going.
I'm open to listening, but it seems silly to have closed it. Super controversial topic, but we closed a school about a mile away from Anderson that a bunch of students go to now, and it's just asinine to me to even consider when there's a perfectly good school in Oak Park sitting up there. I would need a lot of convincing for something like this to work out personally. I think it's silly to have closed schools and then now we're expanding the current schools when you have current buildings sitting there. So anyway, off my soapbox, but
No.
I would need a lot of convincing to make something like that work in town.
I hear you, and I think that there'd be a lot of people that would probably align very closely with those thoughts. I'm also incredibly concerned about anyone who's living around that's the school.
Stop in there at 3:10 on any afternoon, and the parking and carpool lines, and it's a tricky situation there.
But I think that's what we have to be open to, is maybe
Right.
there's a better way to structure all of that. If the road is closed but only to buses, or, there's things we can discuss with them to make,
Yep.
even if it's
So-
not a total expansion, maybe there's another way to just use that space for them, so.
One of the items regarding the traffic and parking, Chief Eastman and I, staff have been looking at is, before any of the discussion of the expansion was being brought forward, we've been looking at different ways to possibly change 4th Street into a one-way, so it'd be continuously from the library all the way to 2nd, just to try to get the traffic flow better and to drop off, pick up, that type of thing. So that we hope to have at least ameliorate that issue regardless of expansion or not. So that would be part of any conversation, because that is a well-identified problem or challenge. So.
I agree.
Well, I tend to echo John. I'm open for discussion, but I had a real hard time when they closed the 2 schools, and now they're looking for space for these kids that they didn't think they
Displaced.
were going to need. But yet I don't want to not see Anderson here. So I'm open for discussion, but I do have some concerns.
Yeah, anytime that you build, the costs are just, instead of taking up existing buildings, the cost is exponentially high. So we just need to see what we can listen
Absolutely.
and then see.
Just to give a rough idea of what they had, again, a lot of this is very rough. They were looking at adding 1 classroom out, 2 wide and 2 high. So it's a total of 4 classrooms and maybe 1 or 2 little offices on this south side. So I'll send the rough diagram that they whipped together, sorry, that they put together and sent to me today. I can make that available and just give you an idea. But I will let them know that we'll hear what they have to say and meet with them.
I'm actually supposed to be at that meeting right now. I could have learned all kinds of stuff about it and came back, but that's why I was a little late. I was there for a while.
That's what they want to discuss.
They were gonna discuss all of that. Maybe next
Well,
week.
we'll look forward to a report then, so.
I'm not there.
Well, you'll get the notes.
So,
All right.
Sorry. So in addition to that discussion, we also will have the truth and taxation hearing December 2nd, to go over the budget, final approval of that. As we already mentioned, the short-term rental should be there with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. I'm still working on that language. I will be making it available hopefully within the week. And we'll go ahead and make that available on our website, as well as I'll be notifying the interested parties that we've had contact from the city. The public hearing was posted in the Stillwater Gazette last Friday. And we'll be sending out the email blast to those signed up. If you have not signed up for the email notifications, please do so. It's one of the best ways to be notified of what's going on in the city. To that point, again, I want to invite the public to sign up and follow the city on social media. We're trying to get that built up, but both on YouTube, we're live streaming tonight, as well as our Twitter and Facebook pages. I know the fire department and police department both have pretty active Facebook pages. So please follow us, and we can try to get you more information there as well. An update on the railroad crossing, the partial quiet zone update. I've been working with the Federal Railroad Administration to get that resolved. They requested some additional information, some additional photos this week of the new pedestrian crossing that we had to add to the quiet zone. So hopefully that will be resolved soon. Hopefully we're in the home stretch of that. It's taken a lot longer than we were initially told. It's much more complicated than the initial process was described, but we are hopefully, as I said, nearing the end. The Lakeside Park playground equipment has been installed. It was being installed last week. The old equipment was removed, and the new stuff, I'm not sure if the council had a chance to see any of it. I thought it looked more impressive than the fake pictures that we got to look at, but it looks great. The colors aren't bright and vibrant, but they're appropriate for the Riverway. I know there was some concern about whether it would be tall enough or big enough, because that was part of the attraction of the old stuff. Was exciting. You're up high on this tall slides. The new one looks even taller. I don't know that it actually is, but it looks impressive. So if you have not had a chance, as I said earlier, I don't know if it's actually, is it open for, not yet, Matt?
No, we gotta get wood chips on it, so
Okay.
probably order wood chips this week, depending on how long it takes to get them. So it might be a week or two.
Okay. It'll be perfect for a Thanksgiving
Walk after?
Thanksgiving Day walk. Yeah. The water feature we have down at Lakeside Park is not intentional. That with the river flooding, we're almost out of flood stage. It's still fairly high. One thing to that, we are expecting a high spring flood because of the saturation that we're currently still experiencing. And Farmer's Almanac a lot of snow this winter, so we may have, we've been warned that next spring we probably will experience additional flooding, but we can hope that it's not that severe, but at least we will be prepared. Another item, the Inspiration Stewardship Foundation. We were told that possibly the president of the Inspiration Community Association would be here this evening. Staff is still working through this item, so there wasn't a formal council agenda item on tonight's agenda, but as I mentioned to the council a couple times, the homeowners association in Inspiration wants to basically reconfigure, reorganize the stewardship foundation. If the council recalls, back in 2015, this was the foundation that was created as a legal entity to manage the prairies. They're the ones responsible in all the governing documents to actually manage the prairies. The city owns them, the HOA collects the fees, and the foundation does the management. The council approved the previous iteration of it. Those documents were filed with the state, so it was legally formed, but it was involuntarily dissolved in 2017. I don't have any information as to why, other than possibly it was expired and was not renewed. If you recall, there were multiple parties through those years of ownership as the developer. So the homeowners association would like to have this. It is an obligation that this entity is functioning to do this. They've had some of their residents, question why isn't the foundation responsible? That they should be responsible, so why isn't this taking place? But because the former iteration is defunct, essentially, other than the governing documents saying it's required, my initial review, and I haven't had an opportunity to discuss at length with Councilor Pratt, but what our next options are. Should we, or can we start from scratch and create something different, or would the council be interested in, as we've already approved the last iteration, just reform that, just for the council and the public's knowledge. The previous iteration had a governing body of 6 people, 1 non-voting member from the Minnesota Land Trust, 3 city council appointed members. There was the expectation of either a council member or a staff person, and then 2 HOA appointed members. It is public property, the city owns it. It's not just Inspiration Prairies, so it's city's prairie land. So there is an interest in the whole city having access to it, but as well as having a voice or a say in how it's managed. If the council has any input now, I know I've mentioned a couple times, I really haven't had much feedback from the council as to what the council would like to see this entity. I guess the HOA is kind of looking for some guidance as to what the city would like.
So do they, do they have any specific concerns that are during this? Because if we own the property and we are maintaining it as prairie, so what is the impetus of getting this back going if everything's going well?
The governing documents for Inspiration state that the foundation, the Stewardship Foundation, will maintain the prairies.
Okay.
They'll be responsible.
Oh.
So the HOA has been collecting the fees for the maintenance. When I've been told some of the residents are challenging the HOA, because the HOA has just been kind of serving in place of the foundation. They're questioning, well, the HOA shouldn't be doing it, this foundation so it should be doing it, that has the city input and the HOA input, Minnesota Land Trust input. Minnesota Land Trust obviously has been involved in all of it up there. But, so that's been, from a practical standpoint, the work has been getting done, but from a legal standpoint, I don't want to say it's been improper, it just hasn't been done the way that it was originally intended. So we can't go back and, we could, but we're not going to go back and amend the governing documents to eliminate the foundation. So it's kind of, we legally should create this entity. Now what that entity looks like, my input is that we can form it however the city would like to. 2015, if you recall, there were the bylaws and the governing documents for the foundation that the council approved. But there wasn't a lot of, from what I've been able to discern, there wasn't a lot of discussion as to what should take place.
So I have a question, and when I was reading this, so as the last iteration of this foundation was made up of 3 council appointed members, but you mentioned staff and council members, but it doesn't mention that it would have to be staff or members, and I think it would be, in our best interest to have at least one of us and probably a staff member on there, and try and get this, if this needs to happen based on how things were written up originally, get form a committee with some teeth and staying power to keep this going rather than have the HOA handle it, and if it is property that's for all the citizens, that it isn't the HOA just overseeing that property. So
The HOA hasn't, we've asked them what do they want, what do they want to see, what are their concerns. They aren't familiar enough with it because it was never actually implemented. They have very limited knowledge or familiarity with it as is. So they were kind of looking from the city because ultimately the city gets to decide, what it's going to look like. So what does the city want to see? Is the city still interested in the initial iteration, initial version? It can always be changed if the council and the foundation decide that, but we know where we've been and where do we want to go with it.
So if the city, if the HOA ever dissolved, who would be picking up the tab for the maintenance and upkeep of the prairie land?
The foundation, so all the governing documents grant the foundation the authority to be created. The actual foundation documents grants that authority to collect that money. So that the foundation has to have officers on it as well, and even regardless of the HOA, they would take, they'd be the ones that would have to collect the money.
So it's
now they can work with the HOA since they're already paying them, but the homeowners pay one check to the HOA, one check to foundation, but the HOA has been cashing both checks and doing the work done. So
you just want the community to come together to be a facilitator of their part as far as the prairie. HOA, there are actually you want two separate committees, but they would do separate billing and
that was the original
expenditure.
intent, to have a separate foundation just for the prairie stewardship. I was going to say the expectation, Councilmember Dahl, was that there would be either a council person or a staff person from the city, and then in addition, 2 other city appointed people of the 3.
Because, I mean, if they're gonna start handling things financially and probably not reinventing the wheel here, but, a recording secretary, a treasurer, things like that, and probably, I don't know if they would be made up of these people or those would, but, I mean, this, the 3-2-1 system, that seems logical and reasonable to me as kind of a model to 3 city council appointed members, 2 from the association and the municipal land trust person, obviously kind of helping steer the ship in a non-voting capacity, I think makes sense to me. I don't know.
Michelle, we've been on here the same amount of time. Do you remember any of us? Because Connie's like...
Well, I remember this, but I don't remember, I remember the HOA and I remember the foundation, but I don't remember anybody actually from the council
Yeah, that's what I can't remember
being
either.
on it or...
No, it never happened. That's
Council
why.
just approved the creation documents, the articles of incorporation, the bylaws.
Then no one followed
The
through.
documents were filed with the Secretary of State's office. So then the next step would have been the HOA appointing their 2, the council appointing their 2.
Okay.
The appointments never took place. So
Okay, because I was saying, I
it
don't
was
remember
legally
anything like that.
created as an entity, a legal entity with the paperwork, but no actual action was ever taken by either side.
Okay.
And I
either
do
party.
know that some of the concerns that I've gotten from residents up there is that they're paying this money, and this is just the ones that have concerns, and they're not really being told where it's going. It's like, or there's never, like at the end of the year or halfway through the year, they're not given a breakdown of like, this is what we're using this for. They're just, here, give us your check. And so I think from what I'm getting to about the half a dozen or so families I've talked to that come to the center, is they just want some accountability. That's their concern, is there's an accountability why they're keep putting out these checks, but not really,
Yeah, that and transparency is
yeah,
that's always
knowing where it's
good.
going.
And
At least that's
If the city owns the property, it feels like we need to take the lead on this and make it happen.
Because they kept coming to me,
Sounds like
well,
we
the
dropped
city
ball.
owns the property, why are we getting our, having to pay the bill every time? I don't think it was ever really laid out clear for some of those people up there.
Sure.
So they wanna know why they're paying the bill, but the city owns the property, so why aren't we paying for it? And I said, because I remember calling you on it one time and just asking you some questions. And I think they don't, it's not so much that they mind paying the bill, it's like they wanna know where
Where
that,
the money.
yeah, you know, hey, I'm paying for this,
Yeah,
but,
and we need to get in there and figure that out, like, where is all the accounting, and can we actually see all that money? And
yeah.
I hope they didn't spend it on something
Is-
that they weren't supposed to.
Is there a real need for 3 council members and a staff? Can it be,
No, I was just
No,
one
3
of
appointed.
either staff or council, and then 2 appointed residents, right? They could be council members, but just 2 that we appoint.
so you got a,
2 council, not 3 council.
Andy?
Total of 3 that represent the city's side.
yeah, okay.
1 is either staff or council, am I understanding this
No,
right? And then the other
one
2.
council, one staff, and then one.
I slipped earlier. It's not necessarily different sides.
Well,
Three
you know what I
council
mean, like
appointed
there's 3, and then they get 2.
Appointed representatives, yes.
Right, okay, but one of them, of our 3 city representatives would be staff or council.
That was the, in the
Original
documents,
plan.
the creating documents, that was the expectation. But I don't think it was a hard
Oh, okay.
requirement.
It wasn't, okay.
I think it was the expectation that one of them would be.
I think in order to make it like solid and actually keep moving forward, it should be that, like at least a staff or a council member needs to be there to.
Yeah,
Quar-
and I would say
Quarterly report.
probably one of each. I would say a
That uses
council.
up 2 of our 3,
Yeah.
if that's,
I think it would just be another liaison appointment that we
or
would
I
have.
suppose we could have more. I mean, we don't have to follow the rules, right? We could make 4 people and then 3 for them and 1 land and water.
City Attorney Pratt,
Or not,
you have
whatever they're
something
called.
that-
Why don't we,
Idea on this.
what we do know out of this is that we need to have more discussion and we
Okay.
need to move it probably, it seems like there's consensus to move it forward.
Okay,
So,
I will potentially bring it back.
I
to
think
council.
so. Did I miss?
Yeah, oh yeah, I think we have
Okay.
to, or oblige.
Okay.
yeah.
See what Andy's got to say on that.
That is
All right.
all I have, that's all. I spoke with enough tonight. But just a reminder, the city will be closed on Veterans Day, November 11th, and again for Thanksgiving holiday.
Okay, well, very good. It was a very busy month for our entire staff, so thanks to you all and your teams. So, appreciate it. And any last comments or? If not, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? Oh, did you have a meeting, a comment that we need to announce going into any kind of?
That, just for the public's knowledge, we will adjourn this meeting, and immediately following this, there'll be a special meeting that will be part of it, be closed for performance evaluation of the city administrator.
Okay, great. All right, so we will close, we can adjourn this meeting. We'll go into that special meeting, and then next month, we will have a short summary at the beginning as we report on that. So, okay, well, with that, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn and go into special meeting.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
John. Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.